Greetings and good evening. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Psychic Inside Show. My name is Joelle, and I'm the Viberarian. I am your host for this conversation. My goal is to elevate, enlighten, and empower you with information and experiences that I trust you will find uplifting, because I certainly do. I'm here each week on the Viberarian Radio Network, on Blog Talk Radio, on Tuesday evenings. The show line is 646-787-8436. You can give me a call during the broadcast. If you have a question for my guest at any time, just press the #1, the hashtag 1, as you know it in Twitter world, and I will get you on the air as soon as possible. Now, we're streaming live here, and while that's happening, we have online community coming together. I like to call it the Good Vibe Tribe, and you can connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. You can find me at The Viberarian. Now, everybody says, what is that word? I'm a librarian who's elevated to a higher frequency. So Viberarian is V-I-B-E, as in energy, I-A-N. If you're out there on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, and you're seeing things that you think are positive and uplifting and you want to share them, I am absolutely about amplifying and spreading the good. So please tag me, tag Good Vibe Tribe, tag Get Lifted, send it to me, because I will absolutely reshare that information far and wide. I think we spend entirely too much time passing on the negative and all the dramatic stuff, and I would rather be engaged in spreading a little bit of sunshine everywhere I go. Now, the Psychic Inside Show, I believe that all of us are psychic. Everyone is psychic. You just may not recognize it or realize it. And in sharing the stories with the people who I interview each week, my sincerest desire is that you will hear something that sounds somewhat familiar, maybe to an aspect of your life or your experience, and through hearing these people's stories, it will absolutely then shift your perspective and hopefully bring you into a place of more acceptance, a part of who you are. Now, sometimes on our show, we have psychics who offer psychic readings, and we have callers on the line during the shows who are wanting to take advantage of that conversation. Tonight is not that night. My author this evening is not giving psychic readings, but I will tell you that he has something that I think is very valuable for you to read, and I mean read literally. My guest this evening is, I can't even begin to encapsulate his bio, because he's an author, he's a triathlete, he is a motivational speaker, and from what I could tell, just like a really exciting and happy guy. So I'm very pleased this evening to have on the Psychic Inside Show my guest, G. Brian Benson. Brian, welcome to the Psychic Inside Show.
Hello, Joelle. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I'm really excited to have you on, and I have to share with everyone, I am a real live librarian, okay? So I do truly love books. I'm a reader at heart. And so in getting ready for this show, I purchased a copy of Brian's book, Habits for Success, Inspired Ideas to Help You Soar. And it says, create your foundation of happiness, balance, and fulfillment. Brian, I am really enjoying what I have read so far in your book, and I'm learning a little bit about you through the pages, but there's so many aspects of your life that are intriguing that, okay, let me just start to say, one of the most unique things I read about you is that you have actually biked across the United States of America. And how does one wake up and say, I'm hopping? I mean, I've seen Forrest Gump, right? He started running across the country. But, I mean, how did you come to be on a bicycle biking across the highways and byways of this country of ours?
Oh, wow. Well, when I was in college, I was pretty active, and I was doing triathlons, you know, where you swim, bike, and run, those races at the time. And I kind of always felt like I'd like to ride my bike across the country. And, about 5 or 6 years later, the opportunity to do it just kind of fell into my lap. I was working at a place, and I was going to be leaving there. It was in Northern California, and I was going to be heading back up to Oregon to run my family business, and I had about 6 months before I was to take over. And so a friend of mine who I worked with in Northern California told me about this bike ride that he had done 10 years before. It was a fundraiser. And I thought, wow. And so I got in contact with the people that put it on every year, and I signed myself up. And so I just kind of fell into my lap, and I had this little block of the summer to do it on, and it just came together, and it was a truly magical experience. Not only because we were, making a difference, but I just got to see so many different parts of the U.S. on my bike. I mean, we went through big cities, Chicago, and Pittsburgh, Minneapolis, and D.C., and that's where we finished. We started in Seattle, and so I kind of did a northern route, and it was just awesome. We stayed at an abbey with monks in North Dakota. We stayed on an Indian reservation, Native American Indian reservation in Montana. We stayed at kind of an Amish community in Pennsylvania. So little tiny towns, big cities. We just went through Yellowstone. So just really saw, all the different aspects of America over the course of 9 weeks. And there was 20 of us.
9 weeks, okay. Mm.
Yeah, and there was 20 of us, and we knew where we were going every day. We had the route kind of planned, and we knew what city we were headed to, and some, you could kind of go at your own pace. I mean, I was a cyclist, and I was, some days I felt like just going by myself and just hammering, and other days I, hung out and just rode kind of a little more leisurely pace with some other folks, and it was just really, really amazing. And one day a week, we would stay at a place for an extra day and do a community service project. And so it was just fascinating.
That is amazing. I mean, I can't even imagine, like the Great American Road Trip, even in a car, and here you are bicycling. It had to be just really curiosities and then commonalities. Like you got to see the things that were different about each place, and then the things that were common about each place as well. Was your group like of all ages of people who were doing this?
Yeah.
Or was it mostly adult people? Or?
Well, actually, I was the second oldest person. I had just turned 30. There was another guy that was a couple years older than me, so most of the people were probably college students age. There's a few people in their 20s, so so probably between about 18 and 34 or something. So now, pretty younger, yeah.
Now, and your ultimate goal of this was actually a service call, because you were then raising money for something that you felt worthwhile about getting on your bicycle and bicycling thousands of miles for.
Yeah, I mean, it was called Bike Aid, and the money that we raised went to a whole bunch of different kind of self-sustainable grassroots type programs. And the people that had set it up 10 years before and had it going annually really had it dialed in nicely, and they connected with a lot of really cool, unique nonprofits along the way, and so we got to learn about them along the way. And at the very end, there was two other groups. There was one that left from Portland and one from San Francisco as well. So there's three groups of us heading across America, and we all finished in D.C. at the same time. And we voted on to how to allot that money that was raised. And I think altogether we raised $150,000 between probably about 60 people. And so it was
awesome.
Really cool. Yeah, I was able to be of service while also having just an adventure of a lifetime.
Now, have you written a book about that experience, or is one in the works at some point? Because it seems like that would really be a collection of fascinating people who you had conversation with and encountered along that trip.
Well, no, you're right. And I mean, I think I have a little bit in the book, the habits that I talk about, and I've briefly talked about it in different things here and there. But no, I'd like to flesh that out a little bit more and write some more on that for sure.
Now,
for sure.
you seem to be a person to where a physical aspect. I can honestly say I've only seen the triathlons on TV and Ironman and all of that. I have absolutely respect for those who seek to challenge themselves through their physicality. But it seems like you kind of have like a real go get it done kind of drive in your nature.
Well, I definitely feel like I've lived many lifetimes. I just get an idea about something, and I guess I'm pretty good at manifesting it or seeing it through. The triathlons kind of came about while I was in college. Like I mentioned earlier, I had a knee injury, and I was playing mud football. My kneecap got knocked out of place, and so I had to have surgery. I went through the whole rehab of that, and a couple of my buddies had done a short race the year before and a short triathlon, and that really kind of intrigued me. It was still very, very new at the time, and so I set my goal of getting myself in shape and doing that the next summer, and so that's what I did, and I kind of got hooked. I ended up doing 4 more races that summer and 10 the next year, and that third summer I probably did 5 or 6, and I did my first Ironman as well, and it just kind of became a lifestyle for me. And it made me feel alive. It made me feel alive, And,
Well, you talk about having like a feeling, like you just wanted to do it, or you were curious about it, and that seems to be a common theme for you, is that when something has kind of called to you, you answered. And not only do you answer, you seem to answer pretty wholeheartedly with 150% of yourself.
Well, I try. There's a part of me that it is probably a bit driven, and it's allowed me to learn some lessons as well. But yes, with the books and when I left my family business 10 years ago, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a little bit, those were feelings that, it was a feeling that it's like I felt like I was done growing there and it was time to leave. I felt like I had this gift inside of me that needed to come out, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I needed to try and release it. And so I left after running it for 11 years, and then I just kind of kept following those intuitive nudges, and one thing led to another, and here I am today, 10 years later, doing all these things that I really had no idea were inside of me at all. And
I love that you said that, following your intuitive nudges. And therein lies like a real key point of our conversation this evening. Yes, this show is about the psychic inside, right? So a lot of people think that means you're going to be sitting with the crystal ball when you do that, and that you're going to be divining people's fortunes and all the things, or Miss Cleo, as my friends sometimes tease me, about. But what you were saying is that there was just something that did not have a logical, and in fact, in some cases, it defied all of your logic and trajectory up to that point. And
Absolutely.
You still then went ahead. Now, you talk about how you were deeply involved in a family business, and at some point there was something within your spirit, then that inner nudge, that was actually nudging you away from all that had been built by you and through your family up into that point. So share with us a little bit then about that. I mean, I have an insight because I've been reading the book, but for our listeners who are just coming to understand, what did that look like for you in your kind of early life or midlife crisis, or if you will, change?
Well, it was a golf center up in Salem, Oregon. We had a driving range, a retail store, and a 9-hole par 3 course. And I started working there when I was in 7th grade. I would pick the balls up. We had this beat-up little riding lawnmower, and we put this makeshift chicken wire cage around it to protect me. from getting hit by the balls. And, I did that. And then I worked there in high school. I started working behind the counter. And I didn't work there too much in college because I stayed down in the city where I was going to college and did some lifeguarding and swim lessons instead. But, I ended up going back there a few years after I got out of college and ran it for 11 years. And, that place was just kind of part of my life, and it kind of, I grew up there. I learned how to communicate with others and learn develop a work ethic, and, I had a lot of memories for a variety of different reasons. And so when I started to feel like, it's time to leave, I knew that I had to honor that, but it was not totally easy. I was a little nervous wanting to go speak with my father about it, but thank goodness, I would have done it either way. But he was understanding and just wanted me to be happy, and so that was helpful. And he kind of gave me his blessing, and it ended up taking me a year to actually leave because he decided to sell it. And so I had to stay around that year while we listed it and, searched out a buyer. And so that was not easy because I was really ready to hit the road and just kind of see what was next. But it ended up being a blessing in disguise because my first book kind of accidentally happened at the tail end of being there, so which ended up pointing me in this whole new direction. So during that last period of time while being at the business, that last year, I was feeling out of balance, and I just was my hunches told me to sit down and write down a handful of things that I knew that would help me during that time period. And so I did. I came up with a little list. One was make sure I was drinking enough water. The second one was make sure that I was getting enough exercise or get some daily exercise. The third one was to make sure I was getting enough sleep. Another one was to make sure that I was allowing myself to have some alone time every day because that's how I, refuel. I'm kind of an outgoing introvert. And then the last one was to make sure that I was allowing myself to be creative every day. And for me back then, being creative was just to play my guitar. So I did those things, and they helped me kind of through that period. And then my intuition said, expand the list and write a book, and I'd never written anything before.
I saw that. I actually have that page, marked in the book because I thought, well, that was a really good basic list of starter things like drinking enough water and daily exercise. There's things that people think, oh, why do I have to make a list to remember to drink enough water and have some daily alone time? But in reality, with our distractive society, and you wrote this book years ago, before the social media era probably was so entrenched in our life, but to start with that 5 things, and so I had made a note to myself to make my list of those things as well, and I thought it was curious because you had 26 and a half easy to use ideas on how to live a fun, balanced, healthy life. So what's the half? What's the half of an idea?
It's goofy. I think I had 26, and a friend of mine said, it should be an even number, and I said, I'm just going to make it really weird just to make it memorable. So the half is just kind of an extra chapter where I just list out a bunch of other things that are kind of self-explanatory, and I don't talk about them in depth.
So well,
there you have it. Yeah.
Well, it was definitely helpful. The chapter that your book is really based on chapters that are many lessons. I found myself thinking, okay, I was going to be reading kind of this linear story type thing, but your book is actually a very useful tool because there are questions at the end of each discourse for helping you like really dig deeper into what the topic is of that chapter. And in this case, in the chapter of balance, this is where you were talking about your list and having the balance in your life. And I thought it was key because you were saying, like, well, I had material comfort. I had invested time and effort in something that was also a shared activity with my father, a family bonding type situation, that it had been part of your reality, but something in your spirit then was still out of balance. And to most people, then that's the point when they hear you say, oh, well, you just need to so-and-so, or you need to look at this again because, not everybody has a blah, 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 you know what I'm saying? But you were like, no, there's something in me that needs a different sense of equilibrium. I don't know. You didn't know at that point in time what it was you were wanting, but you knew that it was not found on the links.
Yeah, absolutely. It just, I think you probably agree that we don't always. We're always. I mean, I'm no different. We're always wanting to try and control the situation, control things, but to really trust and honor our intuition, it takes trust and not knowing what's going to be coming next. It's just, you just kind of got to follow that feeling. And for me, I feel very fortunate that I have been able to do that. I mean, I still have my areas where I have fear and stuff like that, and I'm trying to, continually working on things. But I've been able to at least know and trust my intuition, and that it takes practice, and it just takes a few times just to kind of get into it. I think if people have never done that, but and balance. One of the great things about being in balance is, I mean, there's so many benefits from it, but you can hear your intuition come through stronger the more in balance you are.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's any accident. I was just say I don't think it's any accident that my first book was on a whole bunch of different ways to learn how to stay in balance, because I then became highly sensitive to like what worked for me, what didn't work for me, and it's helped me along the road.
Well, you talked about like ways to perceive what your intuitive messages are. That you talked about like feeling restlessness, or people maybe repeatedly bringing stuff to your attention, like, you should write a book. And you're like, oh, you should write a book. And then you're like, well, dang it, how many people are going to come up to me and tell me I should write a book? Are you trying to tell me something, universe? And that gut feeling. But you also talk about the fact that you might actually become ill. Now, had you reached a point of, like, personal stress where you had started to have more negative backlash from not honoring that gut, or were you able to kind of move a little quicker through that?
No, that's interesting. Wow. I think I have a couple different potential answers for you. One, I think just currently, if I'm working too hard, or if I'm not giving myself the breaks that I need, or you know what I mean, and really playing and doing some of the things that we all need to do in addition to to do our work, I will get sick, and it's just kind of like spirit saying it's forcing me to take a break. But to go back a little bit, around the time when I was starting to feel like it was time to leave, I picked up a staph infection in my knee, which was really odd, and then they kind of misdiagnosed it, and so it ended up having to have it drained like 10 times, which is very painful, and then the doctor missed it, and then one guy, I don't know, some internist or something saw a copy of the whatever, and he noticed that I'd had an infection, and I had to go in for emergency surgery like a day later, and then I had to go get antibiotics in my arm for a month, like 6 weeks, every day, and so it was just like a real, excuse my French, shitty experience, and so I don't know if I'd come to the point of telling my dad that I needed to leave by then, but I don't know, sometimes that may or may not have played a part, but sometimes physical ailments, if we're not, doing what we're supposed to be doing, will hamper us.
It's interesting that you talk about the knee because I think it's in Louise Hay, who wrote the book, You Can Heal Your Life. I believe that the knee is associated with restricted forward motion in our lives.
Exactly,
so
right. And so if that was the
interesting.
case, it fits perfectly, right? Yeah.
Well, but it's like in looking back, like you can see maybe the connectivity, but at the time you were just dealing with like a real personal crisis of your health,
Oh, yeah.
It's so interesting because you're saying here that a lot of times people aren't taught how to trust or that what they are experiencing is their intuition. It seems to me like because of your athletic kind of background, a lot of sports is really like your gut kind of telling you, okay, where's the opening, when to do that, this person is, you hone your senses, especially when you have opponent-based sports, to be able to sense their energy so that you can beat them to the punch or all of those things. So it seems that your intuitive follow-through might have been just a little quicker than some because you came from an active kind of engagement, if you will. But you still didn't necessarily call it at that point following your intuition. You were just like, I don't really. You mentioned feeling authentic. You did not feel like you were living in your true authenticity, although you did not know what would actually fulfill and make you feel more truthful to your being. I think that's so interesting because authenticity is one of those things that's a very personal viewpoint, whereas other people may sense you as, well, you're fake as a $4 bill, and you're like, I'm being my authentic self. Or other people are saying, wow, this is just so perfect for you, and you're like, I'm not really feeling that, So that's a very personalized perspective.
It sure is, and I'm not quite sure how to answer that, but
when you talk about that, you say here in your book that when we are being true to ourselves and moving toward authenticity, others will bear witness and want to do the same. I think that it is incredibly important. It's a great way to find and share inspiration along the journey. And that really is, to me, what your books are doing is giving others an opportunity to see what it is like for Brian to have moved from a place of point A to point B to point C in an ever-going quest to become more true to who you are. And you're not just writing books, like you are speaking in forums and at, like TED Talks. I think that's really cool. You're the first TED Talker that I've encountered, right? Which is awesome because you don't just get to talk people on TED because you have something interesting that you're, wanting to do. You actually, it's like a significant thing. Every time Dick and Harry doesn't speak on there. So to be able to use that platform in addition to your books to speak about this process and what worked for you, I think that's just really awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Ultimately, I guess I see myself as just someone who, I just want to be a living example for others, that if I can step out of my comfort zones and kind of, learn how to follow my intuition, anybody can. And I just want to, don't really try to ever tell anybody what to do, in any of my, the books or the videos or the content that I love to create positive content. And, I just try to share and tell stories and inspire and get people to to really, I think ultimately, you know, as spiritual beings having human experience, we're here to learn and grow. And I think almost the most ultimate task that we've been given is to learn how to love and accept ourselves. And so I guess with all that I'm trying to do, I guess ultimately I'm trying to get people to learn how to love and accept themselves more, because, you know, as I work on it myself, because once we do that, I think if you can love yourself, everything else falls into place.
Mm-hmm. Would you say at the point that you departed the first trajectory then of the family business, do you feel like that you were in love with yourself?
Oh no, I've had to do a lot of work on my self-acceptance. Still do. Believe it or not.
Right.
You know,
isn't it beautiful to fall in love with yourself over your lifetime? You know.
Well,
now,
yeah, I mean, you know, it's like it's a full acceptance. You know, it's a self-acceptance of who we are and what we have to work with, and ultimately, I think that's what we all want. And so, if we can see other people sitting comfortably in that, you know, it's inspiring for us to kind of try and learn how to do it ourselves. Although it's kind of one of those things that we don't really know that we're doing, and it you know, it comes out in all kinds of different ways as we try to fill those voids. And those voids usually do not bring us the inner happiness that we desire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, when you created space for your new trajectory, you talked about how it took you about a year to wind down the actual technicalities of the business. So at the end of that, say 1 year, and the ink is dry on the sale, and what happens next when the door then has closed on the one aspect? Where were you at that point then?
Okay, so I think we did the transfer of the sale like in July of 2008, and so I had planned on moving to Reno, Nevada from Salem, Oregon in October, late October. I have a son. He's 25 now, and he was just entering high school about 30 miles away from Reno in Northern California. So I wanted to be near him while he was in high school, as well as start to kind of reinvent myself. And so I had, you know, about 3 months to kind of 3 or 4 months to prepare for the move, and I was still rehabbing my knee, so I was trying to walk every day and start to get it stronger again after having the surgery, and you know, and just kind of really started getting rid of a lot of stuff, you know, because I had a condominium, and it was, you know, fully furnished and had all kinds of, you know, I love history, and I had all kinds of collections and stuff like that, and so I just kind of started purging a lot of that and making my life a little bit simpler. I mean, I had no idea then what lay before me. I really didn't. I just knew. I knew that the self-help, and I was finishing the self-help book and self-publishing at that time period as well. So I really had no idea what was ahead of me. But I was just kind of, you know, just beginning to start another chapter.
Now, you're writing the book. Now, you like wrote it yourself during that time then. And did you then self-publish, or like, I mean, I guess it's like, how do you say, I'm writing a book today, and you start putting together your topic? Was that stressful for you? Did you enjoy it? Was it just another... Okay.
Yeah, no, it felt like I was, you know, it was like all systems go, and so, you know, I'm really proud of how it turned out. It's a simple book, but you know, I just kind of poured through me, and I think I wrote it in a little over a month, and so I knew someone who had self-published a book before, and so I called her up, and she gave me some tips and put me in touch with an editor and a layout person, and I don't think Amazon Create Space was around then. So she also recommended a printer, and I shouldn't have ordered this many, but I ordered 2,000 copies. I was a fool. My eyes have always been bigger than my stomach, and so there I had this self-help book, and but it was perfect because it didn't sell very much initially because, number one, I didn't know how to market it. And number two, I was terrified to speak in front of people. So I just started feeling like I needed to work on that because if I wanted to share the message, I needed to overcome that fear. So then in Reno, I just, we can talk about, all the different things I did step out of my comfort zone if you want to.
Well, I'm coming to that next, but I wanted to know, did you feel then did you rate the book as a success at that point, or were you feeling good and bad, or did you feel like, wow, that was, I got to do better? I mean, like, where were you with the whole thing?
I was really proud of myself for doing it, because it's a lot of work to self-publish a book, and so I was really proud of it. I think one of the ways that I'm a giver by nature, and I think one of the ways that also my part of me that wasn't, it was interesting. I gave away a ton of books instead of trying to sell them to family and friends, and looking back, if a friend of mine writes a book, I want to support him. I know they would have done the same thing, but so I didn't sell a lot initially, but I was very proud of it, and so I felt very good about it, and my mother reminded me around then also that when I was 3, I told her I was put here to inspire people. And so it kind of made me think, well, okay, I guess maybe I'm on the road to that. And that kind of messed me up a little bit though too, because I felt like I was going to be an overnight success, and it's embarrassing to even mention it. And so my expectations got the best of me, and at different times, it did win a couple of awards, which blew me away, and I did not expect that, and so that probably fed that fire a little bit as well. So, things take a lot longer than one thinks they're going to take, and so the lesson I learned in that was just to, just really just enjoy the creative process, which I did, and just trust that it'll get out to those who need to see it at the time that they're supposed to see it, and so and that helped me a little bit later on deal with just things not happening as quickly as I was ready for them to happen.
Well, I thought that was important. That's why I asked, because a lot of times what happens then is that we get gung-ho. Like we say, well, I'm going to ride my bike across the country. Like I think I signed up for the breast cancer 3-day or something a few years ago, and I start walking to try to get myself together and ready for that. And my first time trying to walk around Stone Mountain Park, which was like less than 5 miles, I thought I was doing something. I hadn't even got to 1 mile yet. Okay, so I got kind of, I was like, wow, I'm not exactly achieving the spectacular woo that I thought that I would. And so that can actually be very discouraging for people when they're looking at, well, it didn't sell. I have copies in my basement still, but the fact that you gave it away and got positive feedback was enough for you to be like, yeah, and you say you enjoyed the process of actually bringing that book forward. So I think that's really important, because another person might have scurried back to, you couldn't go back to your family business because it had been sold, but like to what was comfortable and familiar that you had already gotten a sense of competency about. But you did not do that. You continued then to move and push yourself. You talk about moving out of your comfort zone as well. And so you talk about public speaking was like a very big challenge for you in terms of where you felt you wanted to go. Can you, what was speaking like for you before that point?
Well, I hadn't really had a whole lot of public speaking experiences. I think I took a class in college, and it was okay. But while I was at the family business, we were members of our local chamber of commerce, and it was a really good one. And they met once a week, and Yeah, there was a couple hundred people that would show up, and they'd pass the mic around, and you'd say something, and I was always a little nervous to do that. Or we hosted at our place a couple times, and I'd have to speak a little bit, and it was just, I don't know, I think it all stemmed from that part of me that didn't feel adequate or whatever, looking back, and it seems weird because here I had all these successes with the triathlons and other stuff, and been successful in other things. I mean, prior to doing what I'm doing now, but yet it still was a part of me that didn't feel that worthy, and so I really fought that. Mm-hmm. So I'd really done a lot of speaking up to that point.
And so you didn't then just start busting out like, well, I'm going to talk. You actually went and armed yourself with the tools that you felt would support that. So you talk about Toastmasters. I am I've not ever been in Toastmasters myself personally, but I know the value of that program from countless people who have spoken about overcoming absolute terror at public speaking. How long were you then? Are you still doing Toastmasters, or is it because
no,
of course it's an ongoing thing?
No. So after I moved to Reno, the first thing I did was take a couple of community college speech classes, and then I joined Toastmasters, and I wasn't in it that long. I was probably in it maybe 9 months or a year.
Okay.
It was a great place for me to just have an audience and learn the basics, like you said 35 times in your last speech, just basic stuff like that. And they were very kind people. And so it was wonderful. But then I started, I don't know, I probably got a little scared, believe it or not, because you go through different levels. I mean, there was a combination of me not really feeling like it was the way I wanted to speak. I think looking back, I didn't know it at the time, but I do much better just doing what we're doing right now, taking questions, using the energy of the room, and just letting kind of, source come through me rather than regurgitate something. That scares me. It still does. I fear that I'm going to forget something. It just didn't feel, I don't know. I mean, I did all kinds of other things around that same time, too. I hired someone to co-host an internet radio show with me who had been doing it for a long time. I created a workshop that I made interactive. I thought I was being clever, so I wouldn't have to talk the whole time, but I found out it worked really well that way. After the workshop came out, or after I finished writing it, I ran it in front of 5 friends of mine, and they really liked it. And it kind of surprised me, but they thought it was a really good concept in the way that I set it up. And so, being the silly guy that I was, the next day I got a map out and drew a big circle through Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and California, and I set up a 15-stop, 23-day trip to do book signings and workshops. And I was on the road 3 weeks after I did it in front of my friends.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, I really went for it. Now, I learned a lot of lessons on that trip. One is marketing is very important. Because I didn't market a lot of the events. I didn't know how. I mean, I didn't know the cities and the areas and where to even market it. This was way back in 2009, and social media wasn't what it is today either. But it was very humbling. Some places there was nobody there. Other places I had 1 or 2, and in a few others I had 15 or 20. And so, I'm glad I did it. I didn't sell a whole lot of books, but I learned a lot. And, I had feedback sheets that I would hand out after the workshop, or after the workshop. And more than once, somebody would write more or better eye contact. I was so shy. And the very first place that I went to was in a little tiny farming community called Delta, Utah, and it was the first town that I kind of crossed after driving 8 or 9 hours across the Nevada desert. And when I was setting this up, I just called their Chamber of Commerce, and I said, I asked if they had any bookstores. And she said, well, we're pretty small. What are you wondering about? I said, well, I told her that I wanted to do workshops. And she said, well, I'd like to speak at our monthly chamber luncheon. And so that was my very first time talking in front of anybody. After, 3 weeks after I did it in front of my friends, and here I am in front of 9 people. Most of them are farmers, really kind people, but they're trying to eat their lunch. It's the back room of a Mexican restaurant, and they're trying to eat their lunch while I'm trying to have them interact with. So I was like, oh my God, what have I got myself into? But
here you were then speaking to a Chamber of Commerce, and you had been at Chamber of Commerce meetings with your family business for years. So
yes,
it's so interesting.
Smaller, but yes, right.
One thing that's so interesting that I find as a consistent theme is that people they move into things where all of the ingredients that they actually need have come already from previously seemingly unrelated experiences. But at the time then that the full flowering comes forth, it's like, wow, I drew upon my stamina as a triathlete. I drew upon my time in the business community. I understood the audiences that I was speaking with. All these things coming together to be utilized in your current, at that point, endeavor. And that has, like you said, that was like 10 years ago. And since that time, I can't imagine the number of audiences of all types that you have been and had opportunity to speak with. But you talked about how, for the idea of failure, I really, that word is such a charged word, right? Because it could be seen as, well, I failed as an author because I didn't sell all my books, if that is your measuring stick. Or I failed at my message because the farmers just weren't really it wasn't having anything to do with their true reality. But it does not seem like you keyed in on those aspects other than like lesson learned, duly noted, and now on to the next thing. Now,
and I just needed to I just felt, when it was over, I felt like 1,000-pound weight was lifted off me. I just needed to do it. I didn't really, yes, I cared if I sold any books or whatever, how they responded to it, but just like actually doing it that first time was just enough for me.
And you talk about being vulnerable, and how important that is also to the soul growth and development, is to say, I don't know how to speak in public comfortably. It's very challenging for me. To admit that to people is actually the aspect of vulnerability, and then to actually then move through that and stand on a stage in front of people is also working through your vulnerability.
Absolutely.
I just really want
can I say one thing?
This is please.
No, I was going to say, and one other thing I also did at that same time was I took an acting class. Now, I had no plans on acting, but I'm sure we'll get back to it in a little bit on how I kind of got into actually really acting. But I just wanted to make a comment, though. After I moved to LA not quite 6 years ago and started studying acting and getting up in front of people, and really it was such an important tool for me to learn how to feel more in public, you know what I mean, and then as well as be in front of a camera. So it's really been an education in and of itself, and it's been very cathartic. So there's a lot of vulnerability definitely in acting.
That catharsis feeling of something being able to really be released and moved through, stage fright, fear of failure, even your conversation with your father when you shared the story of how when you approached him about your unhappiness and wanting to do something different, that it was a moment of catharsis, not just for you, but he also then acknowledged an aspect to you in that moment as well.
Absolutely.
And he had said that, you know, he was supportive of you following your true inner happiness, because had he thought differently or been more empowered even in himself, he would have chosen a different kind of vocational pathway too. And I'm sure that observing his son kind of move through that, of course, parents are like, oh, we see you from a mile away, kid. You know, the kids are always like worried, right? And our parents are like, yeah, we see what's happening. We just love you anyway, you know. And he very clearly gave you that message that you were no less valuable to him as a son because of not wanting to be in that moment. And that had to be a release for him as well, to see you be able to stand in your authenticity as well, you know.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, no, I never really, I mean, I thought about it like that, but not really like you just mentioned it. So that was very sweet. Yeah.
Well, we hold so many things in our energy, right? We like being a human. It's not easy, right? Because we're being human in a world where we're seeing ourselves through our external environment, and that includes other people, which by mirroring, that can be painful and fraught with tension for us, depending on how strong we are in our personal identity. And, you know, that's really key as you get, you know, your themes of authenticity, honoring your inner nudge and following your inner compass to do that which makes you happy and balanced and fulfilled. All of those things they leave you open to ridicule. They leave you open to judgment from those who don't understand it. And so, you know, I definitely feel like your story of doing that is absolutely helping people. You know, I mean, it's given me so much just to talk about in our conversation this evening.
Wow. Thank you.
Now, so you're at this point, then you're speaking, you've got your book, you're speaking, you're doing your workshop, and then how is the acting presented? Like, what then came up in your soul that says, you know what, you did all this, but guess what? Now there's something else that we want to do.
Well, so I took an acting class around that same time as well. Just I kind of found a mentor in my community college speech classes, a gentleman named Joe Giampapa, a wonderful man. He'd written some books and did a lot of motivational speaking himself, and just very, very high vibrational and kind. And he kind of took me under his wing, and he also taught acting. And so he told me about the class, and so I thought, well, that would be another way for me to just be more comfortable, hopefully, up, you know, in front of folks. And so I took it, and I didn't really plan on doing anything after that. But I think a week or two after the class finished, I had a dream about like a story about a street guitarist. I know that kind of sounds odd, but when I woke up, it was one of those dreams that you just like, this is important. I need to write it down. And so I did, and I then met a young filmmaker a few weeks after that, and I just thought, you know, his name was Michael Sweeney. I said, Michael, I have this idea for a short film. I don't know how to make a film. I've never acted before, but would you want to do it with me? And he said, sure. And so we found ourselves on the streets of Reno at night for about 3 or 4 nights in a row, and we filmed the little 8-minute short Guitar Man that I wrote. And I felt like it was a unique way to be able to put a lot of good messages into a film. And so while we did it, I just felt alive. And it ended up doing well at film festivals, and it just like, woke me up. Like initially I thought the way that I was going to, you know, how I told you when I was 3, I was put it to inspire people, and I thought it would be through books. But after that happened, you know, wow, there can be a multitude of ways. And so somebody else saw that and gave me the lead in their short film, which had a really nice message. And I just felt like it was time to move to LA after my son graduated from high school. I felt complete in Reno. And I moved here in the middle of 2013. And just
I love that.
Continued,
You said I felt complete. That's you weren't complete as a person. It wasn't like you were tapping out of everything like
no,
that.
But
It's just like I've completed the energy in that area. That's really an interesting way of speaking of what you felt.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. And so
I saw Guitar Man, and I will absolutely be sharing it with my community because I loved it. I thought it was inspiring, and it's very short, like you said, was it 8 to 10 minutes, something like that. And I thought it was well filmed. First of all, for your first film. Oh, wow, right?
Well, Michael is very talented. Yes, he shot that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was like what made me stop is that I'm one that I always honor the street musician. If you're sitting there playing your instrument out in public for obviously the pure enjoyment of yourself generally, because it's certainly not a big economic draw to that, although for some people that's all they have. But I honor the sharing of your talent. So the fact that your central character is, the Guitar Man arrested me from the beginning, and then it was one of those feel-good kind of, make you think, kind of moments that we see now so much of in terms of social media moments or whatever. But no, it was very, very good. So kudos for life-changeable moments.
I'd never played a guitar in front of anybody prior to that. I was a closet guitarist, and so it was very empowering for me in a lot of different ways. That film.
Repeated lessons. You keep talking about these vulnerable experiences used to push through to empowering moments. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, so I come to LA and I just continued the process, just really stepping out of my comfort zone and going to auditions, hundreds of auditions, and being told no, and getting a few, and it was just it's it's not an easy business. But I just kept learning, and I kept kind of just learning an education too, getting an education.
Now you're currently in. This Habits for Success is currently working its way up the charts of sales, and this is your most recent book, correct?
Yes. It just came out 3 months ago.
Okay. I thought it was fairly fresh out of the presses. So you're auditioning, you're in LA, you're auditioning for acting. Like, what else is your life looking like at this particular moment?
Well, I took a little bit of a step back in the acting last year to write this book. I also released a children's book last year, so it was a busy year in doing a lot of that. But going forward, I have a small part in a show that should be airing pretty soon on a cable channel, and so I hope that does well. But otherwise, I'm pretty much just, I haven't really done a lot of speaking yet. I mean, I'm really, that's kind of the last frontier for me. Yes, I did a TEDx and stuff, and I've done a few other things, but that is really what I want to get into doing more. It's just kind of got to figure out a way. I'm just still kind of figuring out a way to do it that feels right for me. It's hard to. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, but I've got I got hired to speak in Sweden this September, so I'm really excited about that, and I've got some other stuff coming up as well, and so it's I'm still working through some stuff, and but I've got that coming up. I've got book signings. I create my own videos. I love to do spoken word, and so I'm going to put a few more videos out in that realm. And it feels like I missed a few things, but I'm open too. I love to collaborate and just kind of keep hopefully reaching more and more people.
So are you actively available for speaking engagements at this time, or is that less your focus? Okay.
Absolutely.
And so would people want to reach out to you for that? How is it your website then?
Yeah, they can just reach me at gbrianbenson.com, and there's a contact page there. They can send me an email. Just gbrianbenson.com. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, one of the things about this habit, as I was reading, Habits for Success, I just was thinking, wow, this is like, something to almost have, well, of course, book club, but it'd be like beyond a book club because it's each one of these chapters is really a lesson in itself. And I have a couple friends who are involved in doing group therapy and group work type of fulfilling yourself. And so I'm absolutely passing on my little almost dog-eared, because I'm sorry, I must admit, I am folding over pages, but as opposed to marking on the pages, I'd rather fold it than write in it. Something in my librarian heart just won't let me do that. But I'm absolutely recommending this for people who are wanting to look at like growing themselves and approaching their lives in a different way. I think it's got a lot of good meat in it. Just to give you my personal feedback, I'm definitely giving it 5 stars.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, that reminded me of one more thing. I'm also a coach. I do some coaching. I have some clients, and I was thinking about actually doing what you just mentioned, maybe like doing some online kind of group stuff where we go over the book, go over a few chapters a session or something, and I'd like to get that going as well.
Well, absolutely. I would say if you're not, definitely as I was looking at it, I was like, well, this is a working book. This is not just a light entertainment. This has something that I need to pause and sit with these. I think it's going to be next to The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle and The 4 Agreements on my little booklet.
You're extremely kind. Thank you.
Well, I'm saying like books that you work with, they come to you in the time when you need the material that's in them. And so, I think there's equality of all of the content,
Well, thank you. I mean, there's a way you can just it's kind of an evergreen book, and you just pick it up and you just flip open a page, and sometimes it's just exactly what you need to hear at that moment. So remind yourself.
Yes. Now, you did mention that you do spoken word, and there are, I think that whole cool like that vibe of, the snapping fingers kind of was so hype.
I would be too shy to do it like that, yeah.
Well, the whole idea of articulating ourselves in a creative way, a spoken word gives people an opportunity to say, well, I'm not a poet, because if it was a poet, I would need to do this, and it need to be in pentamic. I am big pentamic, whatever, right? But like in spoken word, we really have come to a place where people are expressing themselves, and it's the quality of the words and the concept of the words that are presented. And this is not something then you'll see in English literature or high school required reading, but it is certainly something that speaks to people. And poetry and spoken things is a very personal way of connecting. And interspersed throughout your book, you have several powerful pieces. And one of them that I would love it if you would share is light.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh.
I think I have that one memorized. I at least let's hope I do. If not, I can dive into the book. I don't know what page it's on, but okay.
Page 68.
Okay, well, I will go there if I need to. So I wrote this way back in 2011, and it's interesting. When I wrote it, I kind of felt like here I am, like, well, after you hear the words, I wanted just to remind people, but I later on was realizing that was for me first and foremost. I'm just trying to remind myself. But okay, so here we go. Light. Can you see your light inside you? It shines both day and night, leading you both near and far, keeping your path in sight. Can you feel your light inside you as it courses through your veins, inspired greatness housed within, to share for all to gain. Can you taste your light inside you, flavored sweet and pure? Water, land, and truthful food grant energy and cures. Can you hear your light inside you as it comes to you in song, guiding you to flow each day, helping you stay strong? Can you touch your light inside you, compassion, joy, and heat? A tender kiss, a warm embrace, rituals to be complete. Can you sense your light inside you? It's spoken from within. Hunches, feelings, heartfelt signs, giving life a whole new spin. And will you trust your light inside you? Your gifts, your being, your core. True greatness lay in wait to be shared, enjoyed, explored.
That is very moving. I noticed that your logo behind your name is a beautiful sunburst, and I think that is so perfect. Of course, one of the things and goals of this show is for others to be a lighthouse, a way shower that others can look at externally, which you certainly are doing. But everything that you're speaking about, as you said, is turning to look for and experience the light within. And I could not help but resonate that as part of my own personal journey. So thank you from my heart to yours for that expression and for being vulnerable and for being authentic and being the inspiration that your soul knew you were called to be.
Thank you for the kind words.
Do you have any kind of, anything that I missed about your world that you want to make sure is shared with our listeners?
Well, I don't know. You did an amazing job of really digging in there, and I think we covered a lot of stuff. Ultimately, I just, like I touched on earlier, just want to remind people that they are enough. Just being who they are and what they have to work with, and as I work on that and learn that and accept that and come into alignment with that, I just want others to do the same thing. And there's one other. Do you have time if I do one more poem, Your Voice? Because I think it fits perfectly. They kind of go hand in hand. They're different, yet they're similar. And I don't know, this is another way of just kind of sharing that message. Okay, all right.
And I will tell you, I have another one that I'm going to queue up that I want you to do before, as the final, before we close.
Okay.
So I absolutely received the one that you were called to share.
All right. This is called Your Voice, and I think it just kind of fits in with what we've just been chatting about. Your voice creates a ripple over land and well beyond. Truthful words vibrate lifted to create a loving bond. Your voice can be your freedom, or your voice can be your hell. Mindful heed and word and thought send forth love and light to gel. Your voice can give permission to another seeking truth. Authentic, centered living taps into eternal youth. Your voice can be the difference to set a young child free. Loving words to encourage, a model for them to be. Your voice is your ready key to unlock your truthful worth. Spoken pure, life now renewed, energized, loving rebirth. Your voice gives inspiration to those afraid to speak. Reassuring tones shared true helps others gain their peak. Your voice is a kindred link. When spoken face to face, true connection, eyes unite before texting took its place. Your voice is your true freedom when it's spoken from the heart. Intuition's guiding path helps you play your destined part. And your voice is fundamental for all life and love to flow. Empowered, valued, perfect, painting a worldly glow.
So that was absolutely a gift for me personally. It touched me on many levels. I had not got to that one in the book yet, so it was new to me. But it's an encouraging word for me on my journey as the Viberarian, you know. And so,
yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay. Let me get myself together here.
Welcome.
You know, my guest this evening is G. Brian Benson. And Brian, thank you for sharing about just the tip of the iceberg of who you were and who you have become and who you are growing into. I absolutely plan on staying connected with your Facebook page, G. Brian Benson Media. If you're looking to key it into Facebook, at G. Brian Benson Media will pull up his page, and of course through your website as well. But I will be staying tuned because I would love to see what you do next and participate in any of the facilitating of workshops or things that you're doing or any future books that you publish. I will absolutely be also sharing when I finish making my way through the chapters on this as well with my my Good Vibe tribe and community. For those of you who are tuning in, to these programs, I thank you so much. I'm here every Tuesday, and these conversations, I enjoy them immensely for myself, and it's absolutely an honor for me to be able to share these stories with the rest of you. You can download on iTunes or Stitcher, any of the podcast directories for those who like to listen in their car afterwards. This will also be available on the Viberary YouTube channel for future people to encounter when the time is right for them to have that inspiring story of your life and the things that you did. I am back on Thursday for the Viberarian show. This week, my guest is Monique Ruffin, who is an amazing astrologer. She is going to be talking with us about the moon and what's the big deal about the moon, why it's important, and if it can move the tides, how it moves us. And so she's going to work on demystifying some of that for us. And coming up, we've got the big psychic fair in Roswell, Georgia, the 1st of April. I've got another several weeks of guests lined up for you on Tuesday evenings, and I do hope that you return for our next conversation on the Psychic Inside Show. Brian, as we close out, would you please share your piece, We Are Meant to Succeed?
Absolutely. Do you know what page that's on? The other two I had memorized, but
it
that
is
one
on
I don't.
103.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And before we get, because I'm sure it's going to be a nice little emotional end to that, because I already know I love it, but thank you, Brian, for coming on the show this evening and for sharing this work and for all that I mentioned before. Truly, truly, I honor the light in you as it has shown and illuminated me as well.
Thank you, Joelle. I really appreciate it. You have an amazing, you're a very kind person. You have a lot of amazing energy, and it was wonderful speaking with you.
Yay!
Yeah. No, I'm serious. Yeah, I've been on lots of interviews and stuff, and you're very kind-hearted, and it comes through.
I receive that. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So we are meant to succeed. Have you ever felt whiny, angry, or sad, or tired and frustrated, and then acted mad? You're not alone. We've all been there before, when we're all out of sorts and acted quite poor. Take heart and take heed. It's the balance of life. Some days we're quite happy, others feeling some strife. The key to this game is to understand how it's played. When you know what to expect, your confusion will fade. Love flows in balance. It's where we should be. Not too high, not too low, but the middle, you see. Be thankful and happy for where you are at. Life here is for learning. It's as simple as that. So during those times when it's tough or unsure, take a step back and think thoughts good or pure. Remember a time when you had some success. Believe in yourself and never, ever second guess. Your life is perfection, the good times and bad, the easy and the tough, the happy and the sad. Each challenge brings a chance to grow and become whole, to learn from your mistakes and reconnect with your soul. We are meant to succeed, so take heart and take flight. Throw out your fears and give way to love's light. Your destiny beckons, your true nature at hand. Live life to the fullest. It's fantastic and grand.
And so it is, and so it will be. G. Brian Benson, thank you so much for joining me in the conversation this evening. Blessings to you on your journey, and thank you. And namaste to all of you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessings as well. It was my pleasure.
Good night.